Computer. Hello and welcome to session number 16 out of 16. So this would make that the last of this series of the Way of Ascent. And we started this first week of February, and here we are, the beginning of June. So it has been a fun ride. This was kind of an experiment on part of Luke and I to try to do a meditation series around several specific things, a specific path in general, but also specifically around these four holidays that happen to be the first week of each month, starting with Tu B'Shavat, and then Purim, and then Pesach, Passover, and then Lag BaOmer, which all happened this year to hit the first week of these months. So that aligned perfectly. I've mentioned this before if you've heard it, sorry I'm mentioning it again. But what was interesting is that there's a theme to each of these, well, there's many themes to each of these levels of the soul we're talking about, where we're doing one per month. But the themes that we chose to kind of highlight more, which you see over to the left there, awareness, struggle, and connection and unity, those happen to be the same themes that these holidays more or less associated with. So that was one of those really not non-coincidences, as I like to call them. Nothing's a coincidence. So it was a good, it's been a good experiment. We learned a lot. So have other people, I hope. But also, if you aren't aware, we're going to at some point redo this, just Luke and I, and take these longer sessions and shrink them down to like 20 minutes each. So we have 16 of them, and do a series of more professionally done 20-minute videos for each one. And so there'll be a shorter lesson and a short single meditation, and then, you know, one after the other in sequence. So that's the plan for tweaking this thing. But these Zoom nights that we've done have been really good for us, working out a lot of ideas and details, etc. So yeah, we began February, and here we are. Well, it says May, but we got bumped out a week. So we're concluding tonight with our last one. So let me move over to slide number 2, because we've seen these a lot. So here we are. If anything shows where we're at, this is it. We're down in the corner, down there, end of May. As I mentioned before, there's understood to be 5 levels of the soul, as it's called, or 5 dimensions of the soul. The 5th one, though, is not one that we really work on. It's kind of like it's an arrival of unity with Hashem, and so we're really focused on the first 4, namely the lower 3, but also touching on the 4th. And then each of these has aspects of the others within it. So it's a term called inter-inclusivity. So you have the level of nefesh, and then the level of ruach, neshama, then chaya. But then you have, similar to what the Omer count does, you have each within each. So you have all 4 within nefesh, all 4 within ruach, and so on. So we're down to the chaya of chaya, the 4th within the 4th for this week that we're in now. So the question, of course, is, are we going somewhere or are we returning to somewhere? And both are true. We are absolutely going forward in time in our own world, but also, you know, advancing, so to speak, when we study these things to get deeper and deeper. But really, it's bringing us closer and closer to God, to our Creator. So you have that aspect of both of those things simultaneously occurring. Let me just go. I'm not spending too much time on these 2 slides because this is just our calendar here. So well, let's go to the next one. This next slide is one that we've used over and over, but we tweak it each time. And this is, if you haven't seen this is the slide that we use for this and all the studies that I do. I've used this slide for many years because it's kind of what I call the template of everything, the template of existence, the template for the entire Tanakh and everything that you want to learn, because it shows down the left-hand column under where you see world of existence, it shows how God as creator, that these different worlds of existence rolled out, so to speak, from what we could say top to bottom, or from Hashem toward us down here. And then corresponding to this, this is the path he created from himself down to us. So it's like a ladder. It works both ways. It's also our path back, but that's expressed in terms of dimensions of the soul or soul levels. And they do correspond to each other exactly. So we've been through this before, that it started before anything existed. There was an aspect of God we cannot relate to, can't define, can't say anything about, except we know there's more to God than what we can think of, because this is Hashem pre-existent or outside of existence. That's where you see the source up there. And as I mentioned, we don't really get, on the right-hand side, we don't really get to this soul level of Yechidah in terms of working on things, because it's one of complete self-abnegation and connection, real true unity with God, like where our soul connects with God, so to speak. And that the aspect of Bitul is one of complete self-denial, self-abnegation, where it's just completely you with God. But below that, the next four levels are within existence, including the level on the left side where it says beginning of existence. This is a world called Atzilut, which means nearness to the Creator we don't understand. And this is where we get the aspect of God that we do pray to, read about, discuss on all the pages of the Bible. So this is the aspect of God that we can at least, grasp things about like that. It's also the soul level of Chaya. So going back, I should go all the way down the left side first, actually. Let me go back to that. So then outside of existence, then below that comes these, what's called the three worlds of creation, Beria, Yetzirah, and Asiyah. And Beria is the higher realms of like the heavenly temple, the heavenly throne room, all of that stuff, and the powers or forces that control everything obviously under the direction of God. And then you have the middle realm, the angelic world. So if you think of Jacob's ladder, we talked about this. Jacob has the ladder dream with angels going up and down. Angels means messengers in Hebrew, and they conduct our prayers going up, our God's judgments or blessings coming down. Everything goes through this world. And then, of course, our physical world with its spiritual dimensions at the bottom, so to speak. And so when we're looking on the right side, going back up, there's the basic soul level of nefesh. Every human being has a nefesh, or you wouldn't be here. Within that nefesh, there is the spark of God, the original connection that's there within every human being. And this is, if we allow it, and gives us a little bit of thought that there's more to life than just eating and going to work and watching the ball game, whatever. And then when people do get engaged in spiritual discussion, study, and struggle, because you're going to be struggling against your own ideas, you're going to be struggling against what the world has to offer, etc. This is that middle realm of Ruach. It's the dimension where everything's mixed and where we do all the work. And then there's the Neshama level, which is the level that we actually make a real spiritual connection with God, where we kind of get past a lot of the struggle and make a real connection. Now, this doesn't just happen one time. This is a cycle that goes around all the time. But these three lower levels are kind of considered a unit, just like the three on the left are all part of creation. The three on the right are part of what's called the soul within you, or within the body. It also relates to the physical, emotional, and intellectual aspects of human beings, those three. Okay. It also relates to other things, like how when we study Torah text, someone's trying to get in here. Okay, good. It also relates to, like, when we study Torah texts, you have the basic level of the text, the Peshat, and then the Remez and the Drash. And those relate to the actual words and the text you're dealing with. But then when you get outside of that, you get to the mystical, Sod, Kabbalistic ideas that you bring in. So anytime you get to that high level, it's outside of the regular existence, outside of the regular framework of creation and our day-to-day activities, so to speak. So this is how it works. This is how things are set up. The three soul levels on the right, as you see, all have to do with you as a person, as an individual, and your path with God in terms of consciousness or your soul. And then when you get to that fourth level of Chaya, this is where all souls are connected. So this is a dimension of Echad. This is a dimension where there's a unity between all souls. And so this is the tricky part, and the reason why Hashem calls for unity throughout the Tanakh. And other texts, you'll see that we're told to, remember to assemble together, meet together. It's not just to hang out. It's that there is an energy, if you will. There's a way people, like even just Luke and I, just two people, I had my ideas and he had his. We didn't get 1 + 1 = 2. We got 1 + 1 = a whole lot more. And when you had more people bringing in their experiences, their knowledge, their everything, things grow exponentially. So there's a reason to come together, especially to work on things together. That's important. And I'll mention that again toward the end of the evening, because we have a big project coming up and we're looking to make that a central part of that. So the path of the individual goes up to that neshama level, but the path continues to God, but it goes to the level of where all souls connect. So the individual can only get so far. You have to connect with other people on that path back to, on your own path to Hashem. You can't escape it. It's part of the way it's all set up. So food for thought as we move forward. One of the interesting things about the level of Chaya, where you see the word life. So like when you do you'll see people toast and they'll say l'chaim, l'chaim. So that word chai or chaim or chaya, or even Eve's name in Hebrew is Hava, but it's a similar root. It's because she's called the mother of the living, of all life. So that aspect of life or life force is at that level. So it's pre-creation within that world of existence, and it's beyond the lower three levels of the soul. So this is the level of life or life force that energizes everything below within creation. So it's also thus the level of resurrection, of life force. So not only to give life, but the whole concept of resurrection is related to this level of Chaya, something to keep in thought for a little later this evening. We'll get to that. I'm going to pause right here just for a second. Any comments or questions on this chart or anything? I know we've had it up before, but just on this specifically, I'm just going to pause for a minute here before I go any further. If anyone had any comment or question regarding this. And if it's more extensive, we can address it later too. So we won't, but if you want to go ahead and mention something now, you can type it in or just take the mic real quick. But that's before I go any further. Like I say, we use this for everything because this is the template of how God has set things up. And then the other template that goes along with this, I just like the word template. The other template is what is called the 10 Sephirot or 10 emanations of God. And those emanations exist at all four of the four lower levels. They emanated in the first world of existence, and they are present. They're like the building blocks or energies of each of these worlds, although they function very differently at each of these worlds, in each of these worlds. But so you can be talking about them at one level, and they'll be similar, like functionality or concepts in some way from one world to the next. So they obviously, so when you have like Gevurah, judgment at one level, and at the next, it's still Gevurah, but it's going to mean different things depending on, the context, depending on what world you're talking about. Okay, so this is the basic template or chart, and if we need to refer to it later, we will. So this next I only got a couple slides tonight. I thought I'd make this one fun, this next one. And it has to do a little bit with the level of Chaya. As I mentioned, the spark, there's all these levels of the soul interact, with each other, with all the others. So you have that level of nefesh, where the basic spark of God is within you, is also at each level. So even as you progress, you're always kind of going back to the beginning and starting at a level of where you're becoming aware of the next level that you're at. So it's a continual process going around like that. So an interesting idea here, though, is that what you learn at one level may be completely incredible and wonderful and you're mind blown, but the reality is you've got to let that go to get to the next level, because the next level is a whole other dimension, whole other level of thinking, learning, and reality. So there are things you do hang on to, of course, naturally, but there's other things you actually have to kind of let go of, and that's continual as you move forward. Because if you don't let go of it, then you're going to be stuck thinking a certain way that does not really apply to that higher level that you're going to. So that's just an interesting concept that you do have to let go. This is similar to an expression. I'm going to somewhat quote it if I remember it right. I think it was on my Facebook page profile, but they changed the way the profiles work on Facebook. And I don't know where the quotes are anymore, because it was a page you could put quotes. So this one goes like this: if you serve the same God today that you served yesterday, you are serving no one but yourself. Which sounds completely wrong to a lot of people at first, till you really give it thought, because all we know is what we know about God. And if that's stagnant, then, well, we're not only not learning anything, but we're kind of making ourselves to be God, because, well, there's nothing else to learn. I know it all, right? So you should always be learning more about spirituality, about Hashem. And as you do, your perspective, or what God is to you, changes. God doesn't change, but your perspective does, and must change. And as it does, God to you becomes different, so to speak. And so that's goes hand in hand with what I said a minute ago, that you always have to be willing to let go of what you thought about God, or thought about spirituality, or just reality in general, to move forward, to keep moving forward. So there's always that balance between, you don't let go of your faith and your core belief in Hashem, but you always have to be willing to listen and learn from everybody, read a lot of different things, go in areas that are not comfortable spiritually to learn and read. You might think, oh, this is too complicated, or this is not sure about this. Of course, I'm not talking about non-kosher stuff, but you got to be willing to push yourself to move forward, like as with anything else. So the funny thing is here, this picture, by the way, this is an interesting quote. Actually, I credit my wife for the quote. This is actually from her. So I'm a big Matrix movie fan, and it's real interesting that these movies, if you're not familiar, I've got a website explaining what these movies are really based on, which is extraordinary. And the main character goes to these same levels of the soul. The first movie is all about that nefesh level and awareness. The second movie is where all this real struggle begins. The third movie, he makes his connection, and that's where it ended back in 2003. So when you get to this fourth level and fourth movie, which is the level of Chaya, which is the level of the life force and resurrections, well, the movie's entitled Matrix Resurrections, wouldn't you know it? Yeah. So thank you for posting the web link there. So yeah, I've got a lot of Torah, Kabbalistic, Hasidic concepts, hundreds that are in these movies. Why, how they got there, that's a whole other discussion, but they're there. And so interesting scene here. This is actually taken from a still shot from the first movie, where the character Neo looks in the mirror and he sees this strange imagery of him fracturing like this. So we have to allow ourselves and our egos and everything else to be fractured in order to go where we need to go to get closer to the the nothingness of the source. So God outside of existence is nothing that we can understand. So God is no thing, because all things were created by the Creator. So there's no thing that we can associate with God outside of existence. So that's what that quote at the bottom means, the nothingness of the source. God at that level is actually called Ein Sof, or without end, but is also considered like a combination of all things and nothingness at the same time, if you can wrap your mind around that a little bit. So anyhow, the main concept that we've talked about a little bit, and will more over the summer and in the future, is the idea of resurrection. Of course, is the whole concept of bodily resurrection that we're familiar with, but really at a deeper level, it's resurrecting ourselves to the correct desires that we should have, and once had in the early part of the Garden of Eden story. So we all know what happened there. I've gone in weird directions since. And so the whole idea of us all being resurrected is resurrecting to the correct godly desires that are they're in us, they're intended, but they are in us. But that's part of what we do, main part of what we do in any Torah study, any meditation, but especially the one that we've been doing over the last 4 months with this group. So I'm just trying to explain some of the terminologies here. Okay, so that's our Neo slide for the night. Neo will come back over the summer. In fact, just so you know, if any of you are interested, I'm going to be doing, I have all the movies, I've paid for, I have them, and I'm going to be showing those in the Zoom room starting in a week or two. I'll be announcing it in the Devakut group, so make sure you watch for that. So we're going to play one movie every 2 weeks, probably, I think is a good schedule. Not every week's a little bit too much. Plus, it gives time to put some notes. I'm not just playing the movies, I'm also doing a lot of commentary, explaining all of the concepts that are in the films, a little bit ahead of time, a little bit throughout, and some after the movie ends. So we'll be having those. We've done it in the past, but now we have a fourth movie that came out, the new one. We're actually going to start with the fourth movie, because it's always nice to begin with the end in mind, as Stephen Covey says. That's one of his 7 habits. And so we're going to show the fourth movie because it relates a lot, and I mean a lot with a capital L, with the world we're in right now, today, what's going on. And so we're going to show that. And then subsequent to that, 2 weeks after that, we're going to go back to the first movie, then do the second, then the third, and then do the fourth again, the second time. So everyone will get the taste of the fourth, because a lot of people haven't seen it. So look for the announcements. That will be starting probably not this Thursday night, probably the one after. So whatever date that ends up being, the second Thursday, I guess. Would that be the second Thursday in June? I don't know, but 10 days from now or something, like whatever that is. Okay, so now, speaking of which, this series of meditation Zoom rooms is ending tonight. As I said, we're going to be redoing these to, in a more professional manner offline, to create a series and put that on YouTube. And we are doing the Matrix movies over the next 6 to 8 weeks or whatever. During this time, Luke and I, and whoever else wants to be involved, is going to start preparing for what I call the Bina of all Torah studies, or the mother of all studies, which I'm going to show you the outline, at least the first version of the outline to that, a little later this evening. So stick around if you can. This is going to be very, very unique. I love doing unique things. I started doing stuff on I guess you could call it the internet, back in the late 80s. And then in 1990, AOL, America Online, started. And I put together a thing there with dozens of people. And we had, I actually was on AOL staff and helped them develop their chat rooms. Back then, it was all text only, no talking, just text. We had an electronic magazine we put out for 4 years, once a month. I had staff people. We had this whole thing that no one had ever done before. And so that was pretty wild. That was 1990 to 95, and then started some websites in 95, and I've got several of those running now. But I was like trying to do something innovative, and this is going to be very innovative. Without going too much into it right now, we're going to use the text of Song of Songs, Shir HaShirim, from the Tanakh, and we are going to do many things with this. It's kind of like the foundation of what we're doing, because that text is considered the most mysterious text in the whole Bible. If you're familiar with it, the first question you ask is, why is this even in the Bible? Because it's so weird. Doesn't have anything to do with history of Israel, doesn't have anything to do with commandments. It's like very strange text. And yet it's called the Holy of Holies of all the text of the Bible, because it is at a very deep level and is very pertinent for the days we live in right now. There are some other folks and rabbis around the world that are looking to start teaching this to everybody around the planet, because it's very significant right now, what's hidden in this text. So we're going to take Shir HaShirim, and we are going to create our own commentary. We're used to reading commentaries. We're going to write a commentary. We're going to take a lot of good ideas that are already out there and bring them in, of course, like the best of the best. And that's where we need a lot of people to help get involved, and just to Google, find stuff and submit it, and we'll work together. And we're also going to come up with our own ideas. We may even use a little AI, artificial intelligence technology, to come up with, suggestions and ideas, and who knows what. This is amazing what this can do. So it's going to be very innovative in that respect. But then we're also going to take the themes from it and create some meditations around it. Luke's going to be working on that. We're also going to take themes from it and relate themes from it into the world today, and much more. As I said, I have the outline. I'm going to show you the outline later this evening. So that's what's going on with starting this summer. So we're concluding this series tonight, and we're going to have some movies over the next 6-8 weeks. While those movies are playing, again, we need people to help. This is a collective effort. That's another unique aspect of this. We want a lot of people involved. There's tons of different things people can do. And if you can type and use Google, you're qualified, because a lot of it's just going to be go out and do some homework, do some research, and find some ideas and themes and commentaries and videos and lectures, whatever you can find out there on certain specific themes in the text, in the book, and bring them back, so to speak, and we'll work them in somehow. So we'll be recruiting people later. Okay, so that's where I'm at for this. And I'm going to pause here to see if anyone has any comments or questions, anything I've covered. What am I looking for exactly? Well, we're going to be getting into the exactitudes of that, but part of it is going to be like, okay, for instance, here's chapter 1. And I'll offer a lot of, obviously, prompts and guidance and all, but like, here's some themes, some topics, some ideas from chapter 1. Here you go. Go out on the internet and find kosher commentaries, lectures, videos, and ideas, and write down or type or copy and paste or whatever you can make it easier on this end, of why this would be something interesting, and put your own thoughts to it too. Like, I found this interesting because I think it might relate to this other part of the text, or this other idea or theme, or what have you. This is going to connect to a lot of different things. We're going to connect this to, everything from the Matrix to Stephen Covey to all kinds of other things that are out there in the world. This is why this is going to be very unique. We're going to be bringing it all together to show all psychology, culture, entertainment, everything. These themes we all come from the same image of God. So everything that we come up with has some level of connectivity to everything else. So we're going to be using this text to not only explore the text itself, but to really branch out to something that no one's ever done before. So we're going to use AI. We're going to make our own commentary. We're going to connect to all these things. There's going to be multiple unique concepts or aspects to this. So more details to come. When you see the outline in a little bit, I'll show you later when Luke's done his part. I'll go back, pull the outline up on screen so you can see it. Now that will give you hear noises. My cat's on the table making all this noise. Asher Kitty, he probably wants to get on screen here. You want to get on screen? If the cat comes across the screen, it's Asher. All right, so again, we're keeping it kind of informal tonight compared to previous nights, because we're hoping we can talk about some things together. I'm going to I haven't gone too long as I usually do, so I don't think we really need a break, right? So I'm going to hand it over to Luke. He's got a few things to chat about. We may or may not do a little meditation thing tonight, depending on where we're at. But are you there, Luke, and good to go?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to hand it over to you for whatever you need.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks, Tobia. Yeah, so I was just wondering, like I said, we're going to keep it a little informal. And I just wanted to do sort of a review, because there's some new people here, and we've had, 16 of these Zooms, and we've gone through so many different concepts, a lot of different techniques and meditation. We've done every meditation that we've done, it has been slightly altered from the previous one. So each time we did a meditation, it was different, and each time we would learn a new concept, we would learn a new level of experience, whatever. So I wanted to take this time to just kind of ask everyone if there was anything specifically you wanted to focus on, maybe like something you wanted to ask, maybe something specifically about the meditation itself, like something you're having trouble with, you're trying to overcome, can't quite figure it out, or anything having to do with these experiencing these different levels. And just type it in the chat or just let us know and you can like take the mic for a minute. But I just wanted to start out with this just to make sure that we're all on board because it's we covered a lot of information and want to make sure everybody's hang on just a second. All right, we had stranger danger at the house. My dog went crazy. All right, so yeah, just is there anything specifically you want to focus on? Like for instance, someone was asking me about the different because they were having trouble focusing in the meditation. So they were asking him about the difference, the distinction between thinking and awareness, right? So like there's this distinction where it's like we begin a meditation and we're not quite experienced, but so we begin with only like Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan states in his book Jewish Meditation: A Practical Guide. In the beginning, Jewish meditation itself is thinking in a controlled manner. So that's how we begin, and then we learn to kind of sink into the awareness of the thought. Of gradually we learn to access that awareness, and when we start to access that awareness, we learn to access the I, what we would normally refer to ourselves as I, as me. So this is the true experiential, aspect of our consciousness that we experience as ourself behind all thought patterns, our identity, all of these different things, all of these different concepts. And we kind of gradually learn to sink into this and we observe the thoughts as if from a higher perspective, as if looking down, you know. So in the Sefer Yetzirah, this is called Zafia. So it's like it's it's a type of vision where you can rise above all. I say vision, it's more like an awareness where you can rise above all emotional and mental activity and observe everything that's going on. And so at this point, it's good to learn to access that awareness, but at the same time, you can't stop there because that's not the goal. So you'll find like a lot of new age teachers will teach, like all you have to do is learn to be present. Well, no, that's definitely part of it. That's a very foundational thing that we have to learn to do is just learn to be present. But at the same time, that's just the beginning. So we have to learn to access higher states. So being present is basically you're learning to access higher states in the nefesh level in the world of Asya. So as we move through these higher states, we learn to access higher levels of awareness and interconnectivity. So at the first three states, rather, we have these constant states within each world. And this consists of a certain level of awareness and sensation of the light. When I say light, I mean pleasure, presence of Hashem, whatever you want to call it. So it's the sensation of spirituality, basically. So like at the level of Asya, the base level would be Nefesh. At the level of Yetzirah, the base level would be Ruach. At the level of Beria, like the base level would be Neshama, and then the level of Atzilut, the the level would be Chaya. So these are the constant states in each level, and each level has its own level of awareness and interconnectivity and understanding. So like the first two levels, we're learning to get there. We're developing some sort of movement in our consciousness. And then once we get to the level of neshama, we start to understand the secrets of the Torah. As Baal Salam teaches, this is the level where we learn to access the Ma'aseh Markava, Ma'aseh Bereshit, those states. And we will never truly understand them until we actually get to that level. So the Talmud mentions them in Chagiga 13, I think it's 13th, I can't remember. But basically it's talking about how you can't really teach. Can you define that? Yeah. So Ma'aseh Bereshit is the work of creation, and Ma'aseh Merkava is like learning to access these different states. And so it's hard to describe. Let's see. Yeah, the Merkava, it's known as like a chariot, like the work of the chariot, where we learn to ascend. You know, this is like the vehicle for our ascent. And Maaseh Bereshit is when we learn the secrets of creation. I'll give you an example. So in the Sefer Yetzirah, it teaches, if you know how to read the Sefer Yetzirah, it teaches you how to create what's called a golem. But a golem is not necessarily a, you know, in Jewish folklore, it's talked about, you know, as like a, really, to the concealed light of 6 days. Yeah. So like the golem in Jewish folklore is, you know, this creature made of clay, and then they infuse it with consciousness and it comes to life, and then, you know, but actually the true Kabbalistic understanding of the golem is not a creature that you make from clay. It's sort of like a way that I could describe it that would be familiar would be like an astral body. You know, it's like you're accessing this higher self, and you're learning to repair all these different things, and you're creating a spiritual structure in a sense. And so it's very complex. But anyways, I want to get back on topic. So yeah, so as we access these different levels of awareness, we start to, you know, kind of feel the sensation, and that's really how you learn to access the spiritual worlds. It's not something that you see. It's not like a vision that you have, you know, like a prophetic vision or something like that. It's, you learn to feel these states. And you know, like the first level can come as, you know, a certain level of expansion, but also a level of connectivity. You learn to kind of access the awareness of who you truly are. And as you move to the second level, which would be a ruach of Yetzirah, it would be like um, trying to I'm trying to describe this without giving it over, because it's important for everyone to kind of access this on their own and figure it out on their own. But so on the second level, it'd be more like you would, you know, like it says here on the chart, personal struggle. So um you start to feel the movement within your consciousness. You know, like there's such a desire and yearning to go further, and you're breaking through the klipot. You're breaking through all of that that's holding you back. And then you get to the level of neshama of Beria. Then this would be the constant state of Beria. But at this level, you're feeling a greater sense of expansion, interconnectivity, um, which is informed by the higher level. So when I say that, it means like you can sense this interconnectivity between you and everyone else. Yet at the same time, there's still a you there experiencing it. You know, you still have a strong sense of personal identity, personal consciousness. Um, but at the same time, you're no longer confined completely to, you know, you're no longer totally identified with your body and your ego. In other words, you can kind of sense beyond that, you know, but there's still like a back and forth. There's still a tiny bit of struggle, but at this level, you're mostly, you know, there, but you're waiting for Hashem to help you get to that next level, because without Hashem's help, there's no way you're getting to the level of Chayah. And very few people do. Um, like we can taste it in meditation. You know, this is called the flavors of the Torah. So we can taste it in meditation. We can kind of study this level and yearn to attain these qualities of each level. And this is what kind of pulls us up the ladder with us just studying each little individual, you know, um, all the little pieces that work together, you know, at each level. All the Sephirot, the Partsufim, learning how all this would not relate to desire the Merkaba, create Merkabas through your intention. Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, well said. Yeah, so that's basically it. Of course, when you start to access that higher level, it's like you learn that, you know, the language that you used before is kind of different. You know, like if there's a different way you can explain it at that level. So it's just it's like Toby was talking about earlier. It's like you have to learn to let go of your previous understanding of it, because that's really the only way to move to the next level. It's like you see so many people arguing on Facebook about, you know, it actually means this and then blah, blah, blah. And then there's healthy debates, but most of the time it's just people who believe that they have everything figured out. And that's where we get stuck, you know. And we really don't have it figured out. You know, we have this intellectual understanding of something so far that we think we understand, you know, but truly most of the time from my experience and what I've seen, it's not the case, you know. And even for myself, you know, I went through many different phases where I thought I had it figured out. And then I find out, you know, that I was totally wrong. And I would have to let go of that understanding and in order to move to the next level. And I realized that one of the one of the ways to actually measure this connectivity is your relationships with people. So this is, you know, pertaining to the level of Chaya that we're on right now. Um, this is really important because everything can be measured through the relationship, our connectedness with others, because that's what the Torah is founded on. Love your neighbor as yourself. And this is the only way that we learn to truly measure this connection that we have with Hashem. And so, like, if you see Kabbalah in this way, you learn to kind of use it as a science. You know, it's a map of our consciousness, and then we have different levels of measurement in order to understand where we're at. You know, we can look on the map where we're at, we can feel where we're at, and this is really important. And we can't do this without, you know, consistent study of Kabbalistic texts, you know, the writings of the sages and rabbis. And it's really important to do this daily, and if not daily, you know, every other day, but try not to keep too many days in between because the process is cumulative. But through the study, we begin to build the intention, you know. Well, we say intention, but really it's something much higher than that. But you begin to build this intention and this desire. And like I said earlier, you're building a spiritual structure. You know, in the language of Kabbalah, we call this a partsuf. And then once this reaches a certain level of wholeness, there's a movement to the next level. And so, hang on just a second. Okay. Yeah, so there's a movement to the next level. And so you feel kind of like there was something I mentioned in the group. I don't know if people saw it, but the concept of shame. So in Kabbalah, this is like a different understanding. So here you're seeing where you're at, but then you also recognize that, you get a glimpse, because the point of the next level is within the level you're on, but you can't quite see it yet. So you have to wait until you're able to rise above that level that you're on in order to see the level that, that you're coming from and what needs correction on that level. So we can't correct the same level, it sounds confusing, but we can't correct the level that we're on presently without rising above it to see what it is that needs correction. But hang on just a second. Okay. Hang on. I've missed a lot in the chat. No, I didn't. Okay. The world will be at Syria connects to Asia, Rabbi and Lucas. Yeah. So that's basically what I'm talking about. So the point within you, within your current level of experience is, the beginning of the next level. And you kind of have a sense of what it might be, but the shame concept is technically you're seeing the next level and you realize you don't have that. Emily said in the group earlier, it's basically like, from her understanding, it would be you basically don't feel good, that you recognize it and then suddenly you don't feel good because you realize that you're not at that next level. You're studying and you're getting really into it, and you think you're really progressing, and then all of a sudden there's a glimpse of the next level and you're like, oh man, that's beyond where I'm at. And then you have this sudden sensation come over you, and the Kabbalists call that shame. And this is what kind of generates the desire to climb up the ladder further. It's a very important thing, and it's only through shame, through this concept of shame, that we actually are able to move up the ladder. And so this is where our desire kind of builds. And so we move up the ladder and we learn to experience a higher level of awareness, awareness of our personal struggle and mental activity, our interconnectivity. And each level, it's basically like everything is all one, but each level has a different, measurement of coarseness to it. So like at the level of nefesh, it's a very heavy, level. We're still very identified with the physical world, but we're learning to access that spirituality, and awareness of where the physical connects with the spiritual world, and just kind of gradually you become more sensitive to it as you move up. And the sense of expansion, you feel this lightness and ease and joy, and it's coming from a place where you're no longer identified with this personal consciousness, with the ego. And so Rabbi Daniel Katz says, basically whenever you experience a release from ego identification, this is a redemption from exile. And this is where joy arises. So one of the things I used in many of the Zooms, just an example, is like when you're totally engaged in a story or a movie or in a conversation or whatever, you kind of lose yourself in it. You totally forget about yourself and all of your problems. And that's because you're no longer thinking about yourself. And suddenly there's this joy that kind of comes up, or this feeling of aliveness, that just kind of springs out of nowhere spontaneously, because you're no longer absorbed in your own problems and your own thoughts. And, it's like there's a release from that. And that's why, whenever you watch, you go to the cinema, or you watch movies at home, or you read a book that you're really into, or study, it's like you're moving and exiting yourself to a certain degree. And to the degree that you're able to do that, it's, you know, the degree that you're able to experience the joy and the redemption of that release from exile. Yes, the resistance falls away. Right. Yeah, you have a lot of inner resistance. That's something else we've covered. So at the level of nefesh, we still have a lot of inner resistance to whatever Hashem sends our way. And, like I just said, there's different levels of coarseness to that resistance. And then we also have the level of emotional connectivity, directing our thoughts towards thinking of others rather than thinking of ourselves. And then also our desires are more direct, and our desires and intentions are more directed towards connectivity with others and the goodness in others. But really, this is the point of godliness in others, because Hashem is only revealed in the connection between us whenever this is realized. So this is what I was talking about earlier. Like, this is the only way to truly measure your connection with Hashem, is through our connection with others, through our relationships. And it's not necessarily what's happening on a corporeal in a corporeal sense, but you feel something above that. There's like, and something else kind of springs from that whenever you kind of become attached to the other through that similar desire and sensation. There's like so whenever we do the meditation, one of the examples I use is like the air around you becomes full. So right now it just seems like empty air, heavy body, right? But whenever you enter into the spiritual world, the reverse happens. Suddenly it's like very light body, heavy air. And it's not necessarily the air itself, it's the spiritual light that you begin to feel. Because really, there's no space in the spiritual world, there's no division in the spiritual world. Everything is one. And when we learn to kind of access that through these degrees, we learn to feel it as a living sensation. It's not just an intellectual understanding. But at the same time, we also experience a new kind of emotional response to whatever's happening to us, and a new way of thinking about things, at the same time that we're experiencing this different level of consciousness. And each time it changes, it shifts a little bit. And so it's just a gradual progression, and we have to be very patient with Hashem, be patient with ourselves, be patient with everyone we're studying with, because it's going to take some time. There's some people that can access it super quick, and those are the tzaddikim. Those are the people who are made to come here and teach everyone and liberate everyone. And everyone has that potential, but sometimes it takes a few lifetimes, to get there. And so, hang on just a second. Yeah, so I was gonna see, like, if anyone had any questions about that, or if they want to maybe do a meditation. So what would you guys rather do? Would you rather talk some more about this and about these concepts, or do you want to do a meditation and just type that in the chat?
Luke, you're muted. I don't know if you know that. Or maybe you are and you went off somewhere to something.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So
You want to do a quick, shorter meditation, that would be fine.
yeah,
I think,
I think that's the majority vote anyway, so we'll go
yeah,
ahead and do
and
that.
and then afterwards, if people can stick around, I'm gonna go over, show folks what the first version of the outline is for this summer's big project. So I'll leave it off to you here.
All right, sounds good. All right, everybody. You want to just find a comfortable position. If you'd rather lay down on your bed or whatever's most comfortable to you. And just kind of relax your body, place your hands in your lap or by your side. Make sure your spine is straight just so you won't have to continually adjust your position. Go ahead and close your eyes. Bring some attention to your breathing and the harmonious functioning of the body. How it's all just happening very harmoniously without any of our conscious involvement. And this harmony extends beyond the body. This harmony not only exists in every cell and molecule, in every atom, but also in our emotional sensations, in our thinking. Everything is happening exactly the way it's supposed to. Everything comes from Hashem. Just relax your face, your neck and your shoulders, your arms. Relax your abdomen and your back. Relax your legs, your feet. Feel the connection between you and whatever you may be sitting in or laying on. And just notice as you kind of shift your attention into the sensation, you feel a tiny little subtle release. And the more we can shift our awareness into the sensation and the connectivity, the more we feel this kind of subtle release begin to expand into a certain sense of lightness and ease and subtle joy. Yeah, so Eric, we're starting the meditation. Go ahead and find a comfortable position and get relaxed. Close your eyes and focus on the breathing, harmonious functioning of the body. Oh, lost Eric again. Just allow everything to be as it is. Any kind of emotional residual from the day, yesterday, any anxiety about tomorrow, just allow it. Just bring some attention to it. And if you're experiencing something kind of negative, you can bring this compassionate awareness to it that we call rachamim and surround it as if you're hugging it with your consciousness. And if you need to, you can speak to it. I see you. And just feel it fully. The story I use here is whenever you encounter some children in a marketplace, they're lost and they're scared, and they just want to return back to their parents, their source. So would you push them out of the way, or would you give them a little bit of attention and show them compassion, and then help them return to where they're supposed to go, to their source? So it's in the same way that we view our emotions and our thoughts. Everything has a divine spark within it. And whenever these things are fallen, we have to view them as lost and scared. And they just want to return to their source. So this creates a whole different way that we start to view our emotions and our thoughts. They're no longer extraneous thoughts because we have this recognition that everything is coming to us from Hashem in order to be elevated. Everything has a purpose, even seemingly negative thoughts, negative feelings. And just focus on the inhale with the intention that Hashem is breathing this breath into you. And as you exhale, Hashem is inhaling. So it's not the breath itself that's spiritual, it's the life force within the breath and the desire from Hashem to bestow life and goodness and pleasure. Just kind of connect to that to the degree that you're able. Just this constant back and forth, running and returning, expansion and contraction. And you start to see that everything kind of moves in this way. Not only the breath, but our emotions, our thinking patterns, our consciousness. Every sensation, every emotion that you feel, every thought is emanating from Hashem. Just focus on if you feel any negative emotions. Surround this in your awareness and just let it rest there for a minute and just see what's there. Is there anything there that you've been holding for a long time? Maybe not a long time, maybe it just happened today. Or maybe it's some concern for what's happening in the future. And just like I told the story about the marketplace, children, show this awareness, show this compassion, this compassionate awareness. Surround it in your awareness and consciously arouse compassion. Start to see it through the eyes of Hashem. Hashem is very merciful and compassionate. How would he view it? How would he view our thoughts? You would see them. You would see how much pain that they're in. You would show them love and compassion. It's all about relationship. Relationship with our emotions, with our thoughts, with each other, with Hashem. Just try to feel right now if there's any kind of desire that is very focused on you, something that you want for yourself. Maybe there's a bunch of thoughts emanating from this desire. the majority of the thoughts that are going through your mind, it's because there's a very prominent desire that maybe it's not being fulfilled. And suddenly we realize that from this desire not being fulfilled, we have these thoughts, and these thoughts create certain emotional responses, emotional reaction. We kind of learn how everything is truly connected. But like I said earlier, sometimes it's those thoughts about ourselves that keep us from truly experiencing connection beyond ourselves. Because we're more concerned about fulfilling our own desire than we are others. And that's where our suffering emanates from. We're thinking more about our problems than others. And our desires are more focused on ourselves than others. Suddenly we realize we're not quite at that level we want to reach yet. We see that the majority of our desires and our thoughts and emotions are all being experienced because I want. I want for myself, sometimes at the expense of others. And to enter into the spiritual world, we have to learn to invert this intention. We're not trying to change any desires. We're not trying to force ourselves to stop thinking certain things. We're not trying to force ourselves to stop feeling. We're only inverting the intention from receiving for ourselves to receiving for others. How can I receive this for others? This really strong desire that's in me. Hashem placed it there just like He did all our thoughts and emotions, the situations we're going through right now. What is it about this desire? Because the strongest desire is what's going to take you to the spiritual world. We just have to learn how to correct it. We do this through studying Kabbalah, through practicing meditation, through tefillah, through prayer, through doing mitzvot, not for ourselves, but for the sake of Hashem, for the sake of others. Whenever we shift this intention and learn to invert this intention, we learn to sense a connection beyond ourselves. And it's only through this shift in intention that we learn to sense this connection between us, this opening of our hearts towards each other, where our thoughts are more directed towards the other than myself. Our feelings and emotions are more directed towards the others than myself, not to change the way I feel. It's not for me. And just try to sense this connection between us. the spiritual world, like I said, there's no division, there's no space. It's timeless, above time, space, and motion. When you get a sense of this, you kind of feel a certain stillness, a certain silence behind everything. And when you access the stillness and silence, at the same time, you feel sort of like an expansion, an exiting of yourself. An opening of your heart towards the other, to feel the interconnectedness. We feel how all of our desires, everything's intertwined, interconnected. The way I feel and think affects the other person. What I desire and how I desire it affects the other person, whether we realize it or not. So it's through this awareness that we rise above it, that we can see, we can look down from a bird's eye view, so to speak, and see what it is that needs correction. Which desires. When we find the desire, the strongest desire for myself, we first restrict it. And this is called the death of the desire for myself. And as we grow, we learn to desire for the sake of others, in order to please Hashem. And this is the resurrection of the dead desire. And as soon as we learn to access this desire, we feel the interconnectivity. We feel this collective consciousness. But at that point, these are just words. At that point, you're feeling what it is. You're feeling this fullness and wholeness, tranquility, joy, ease, lightness, even in the midst of chaos. When we can access this, we can have negative emotions, negative thoughts. But because our intention is not directed towards ourselves, they no longer bother us. We just kind of see them pass through the screen of our awareness. Negative thought, a negative emotion, maybe a desire pops in, and suddenly we're just aware of it, and we no longer have to follow it. And we have this corrected intention that whatever we receive, whatever desire comes to us, whatever thought to do something, we receive it for the sake of others. How can I use this to benefit others? How can I use this for Hashem's sake? And it's all about this. This is the level of Bitul. We're no longer encased in our body. We realize that our body extends beyond ourselves, beyond the physical. We feel this non-local connection to all the souls. We think of ourselves as this humanoid-shaped, invisible soul in a body, but this is just the ego trying to, give you some kind of image. Truly, there is only one soul, with different grades of coarseness that we learn to pass through. And we can't do this without a true prayer. Through feeling this shame, we learn to access a true prayer, something truly from our hearts, because we see that we're not there yet. And we ask Hashem, please, bestow on me the correct desire, the correct intention. Create in me a clean heart, O Elohim, and renew a resilient and an equanimous attitude within me. Help me to constantly correct my attitude towards whatever arises in the present moment, as if I had chosen it, as I only desire to do your will. Help me to learn to access this level of interconnectivity so that I will truly learn to feel the other as myself. And through feeling the other as myself, I learn to love others truly. I feel what they feel. Our thoughts are intertwined, our desires. And vice versa. I learn to correct my attitude not for my own sake, but for the sake of others. And in this, we are truly learning to love our neighbor as ourselves. We're returning to that original desire. Hashem only desires to bestow absolute goodness and pleasure. He desires to bestow himself. The absolute good and pleasure. He desires for us to enjoy it, to feel this pleasure. But our uncorrected state, we feel pleasure only for our own sake and not for the sake of others. It's only when we start to feel pleasure for the sake of others that we can access this original thought of creation. Hashem desired to create a creature and fill it with light. And the creature is not you, it's all of us. All of creation, all of the cosmos. This is the creature. Return to your breath. We now have a greater impression and sensation of Hashem breathing into us, a greater connection to the life force within the breath and the desire within the life force to bestow goodness and pleasure. As he exhales, we inhale. And as we exhale, he inhales. We're all breathing the same breath right now. Not just the physical breath, but the life force and the original desire, the thought of creation within it. Just bring this back with you, this impression of the light, this new awareness of what within you needs correction, what you need to pray about, what you need to study for. And this new understanding that it's not for myself that I study. It's not for myself that I practice meditation, that I pray. We can see that in the divine prayer service. It's not about me, it's about we. And we might feel a sense of shame, but that is the way to the next level. That's the only way. It's through this awareness and inner recognition that we learn to cross the barrier. Just kind of relax and return to the harmonious functioning of the body, becoming aware of it, becoming aware of your environment, the harmony within everything. Everything contained within the present moment is coming from Hashem. Physical sensations, your emotions, your thoughts, your desires. Everything emanates from him, and there is nothing besides him. Try to feel this in the sensations, and the physical sensation and the sensation above the physical, the connection between us. And go ahead and open your eyes, but as you do, try to remain in this state. Try to keep this sense of a connection beyond ourself. This importance of this connection beyond ourself, and how everything that we do, emotion that we feel, every thought we think, every desire that we have affects the other. And through truly learning to do for the sake of others is what pleases Hashem. And in this sense, we're bringing heaven down to earth, right? Uniting all the souls of Israel, becoming a sanctuary for Hashem to come and dwell within us. All right, go ahead and relax. We are done. Yeah, Jacob.
I met this guy one time who's my friend neighbor, and he said something funny, or it was interesting. He said, you know, I always just try to do, live a good life, but don't do anything my mom wouldn't be ashamed of.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah, so I thought that was a really cool thing. He really meant it. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's always a good thing. It's like you're always thinking about the other, you know, and that's it takes you to a certain level, because thought can only take us so far. And
Well,
once we get to that,
so my what I was gonna say is like I get kind of frustrated when I see like the bar scene where a lot of people are just going around, pardon my language, but you know what the end goal is over there a lot of times,
yeah,
especially when I live right by that, and I get so frustrated with these people. I just want to say like, wake up! What's wrong with you? Stop all this. Um,
yeah,
but at the end of the day, I just would say like, what did your mom tell you? Like, how were you raised? Does your mom
hmm
approve of all this? That's I think it's just a simpler, objective way. Look at
yeah. I mean, that's the beginning. That's whenever you start to truly remember that everything you do affects someone else. So it's like even at that level, it's more unconscious than conscious, but it's a start, like that's whenever you start to realize, you start to think of others, people who have taught you lessons, and then suddenly you find yourself in a position where you're doing something you're not supposed to, and then suddenly you think about that, and then you feel that shame come over you. In the same way, this is how we experience that transition from one state to another. It's not necessarily coming from something that happened in the corporeal world, but it's coming from a recognition that there is a potential. We glimpse this potential of the higher level from the state where we're at, and we realize there's this, even though we felt like we had reached a certain degree, we realize now that there's a certain chasm between us, between this state and that next state, even though from our perspective that's how it seems, but really there's no separation. But this is how we do it. This is like, we have to feel that shame, and like you said, there's a way it all begins. You start to think about like what someone taught you, and you find yourself in a certain situation, and you suddenly remember that, and then you're like, oh man, you know it's in the same way. It happens in the same way. But whenever this happens, when we start to transition from, we'll call it this world, to the world, above, the spiritual world, the world beyond the machshon, the barrier, um, we start to realize that, there's this higher level that I'm not accessing because I'm totally absorbed in myself. You know, I'm absorbed in thinking about my own problems, and thinking about, my feelings, trying to numb my feelings, trying to distract myself, and it's through this constant absorption in our own, you know, stuff that we forget about others. We're unable to be present with others, with our family, with our friends, with our children, our wife, or whatever. And so it's important to learn and to study and to, truly, truly apply yourself to the study of Kabbalah, because it's only through this that we kind of access that increase in desire. And of course, we have to go through this state of shame, and it might not last very long, but it's enough for you to recognize that there's something missing. You feel a certain emptiness come over you because you realize that there's this state that the sages are talking about, that you're not there yet. You realize that, and you feel that you don't have that, and that's where the shame is. And then we have to, this is the shame that awakens that desire to move higher. And so you kind of apply yourself more, you dig into the study, because at this point you have two choices. You can either become depressed that you haven't reached it, and then you kind of slack off, or you can dig in a little bit more and apply yourself a little bit more. And this is where the importance of the group comes in, because whenever we experience those descents, it's like we talked before the Zoom. Whenever we experience those descents, we feel a certain, fizzling out. It's like we no longer have a strong drive to study, to practice, whatever. But in a group setting where we're constantly interacting with each other, either online or in person, we can absorb the desires of the group. And in that sense, the group becomes like a vessel. There's this, and like we talked about in the meditation, there's this connection between us where Hashem is revealed. And so trying to do this on our own is almost impossible. We have to have, unless we're, one of those souls like the Baal Shem Tov or, something like that, we need a group. It's very important we need a group, that we have a group, because without a group, without at least one person to study with, you're going to get absorbed back into yourself. And that's whenever we revert, we go back. We're not going towards the goal. We start to realize that we're studying only because we're really interested in it. It's really, we want to find out some cool stuff. But then at the same time, we realize we're not studying to correct ourselves. You have those moments where you realize it's like, oh, I'm not actually studying to correct myself. What am I studying for? It's like, because the ego likes to trick you, that Yetzer Hara likes to trick you. It's like, oh, this is super interesting. I want to find out more. And maybe you do have a group and it's making you, it's giving you a drive to continue studying and dig deeper. But then you have that moment where you realize, it's like, wait a second. I'm digging deeper, I'm researching more, but at the same time, what am I doing it for? What is the desire here? Where is it aimed? What's the intention? And this is something we constantly have to go back and check, because this is the nature of the ego, to constantly revert back to for myself, and so the work lies in correcting the intention towards whatever we're doing, whether it's a study, like we approach the study in a way that I'm coming to the study in order to correct myself, to elevate others. And that sounds kind of strange because the ego doesn't like that. The ego wants things to happen for me. It wants to experience pleasure for me. And so we have to kind of trick the ego. And we have to throw the dog a bone, so to speak, every now and then, in order to keep been studying with a group for 8 years. I know the feeling and sensation. Great. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's something that we all experience, especially in a group setting. This is where you experience more advancement, and it happens faster for you, when you're in a group. So that's the importance of the group. We have more desires, and everyone is absorbing each other's desire, especially when everyone is in an ascent together. That's a really special time where you can really, really dig in and connect with each other and connect beyond the group and feel this higher connection, and receive a higher level of understanding of what you're studying. And it's really, really important. But at the same time, we constantly have to check, even during an ascent, what our intention is. Are we receiving this because we want to feel good, because we want to feel enlightened and connected? Or are we doing this for others? So this is the chasm between the desire of the ego and the actual higher desire, that we're aiming for. But anyway, I've jabbered on too long here. Let's see. Yeah, so if anybody else wants to comment or ask a question, take the mic or whatever. Find that I feel horrible when I have an ascent. Yeah, because you're remembering, you're going back to that, and you're like, okay, it's important whenever you're in an ascent to remember the descent, right? So you have to remember what you went through, why you're going through it, and during that ascent, bring that with you to that next level, because in an ascent, we're rising above the ego in order to correct what's going on there in our desires. But yeah.
I wanted to mention something.
Yeah, sure.
It's a midrash, so take it for what it's worth. Um, so I don't have the exact citation, but there's this concept of the suffering of the Mashiach that
Mm-hmm.
it's an interesting idea that Rabbi Mendel brings down, because what he's saying is that one of the sufferings of the Mashiach ben Yosef is that he is exposed or in an area that's like tremendously, just extremely immoral, which was Mitzrayim. And there are all sorts of temptations there. And so part of the the fact that um, Yosef earned the title Tzaddik, Yosef HaTzaddik, is that he was exposed. Well, he passed the test. He didn't fall into the temptation, but the underlying point behind this whole suffering of Mashiach ben Yosef is that the reason he gained that title, Tzaddik, was attributed to that, but also because he was really like what Rabbi is saying is like he was really surrounded by an enormous area of temptation, and to really understand to be like the concept of temptation is that you can't be tempted by something that isn't there, like that's something that's taken for granted. So like the stronger the merit for resisting a temptation, then the bigger the temptation had to have been in order. And you can think about it's the other way around too, whatnot. But yeah. So he's saying that like Yosef, you know, he maintained a state of righteousness and true like holiness, righteousness in the midst of such an immoral place. And I just wanted to know you know well I guess I'm just saying that because you can feel like the person that's crazy for being trying to be not even being righteous but trying to be holy. you know
Yeah. Yeah, that's true too, because you do feel that resistance. There has to be some resistance to. So this is what I was talking about earlier. It's the restriction. So we go through 4 levels of restriction. The first level is symptom Aleph. This is where we completely stop receiving. We suddenly get this awareness where we realize that everything that we've been receiving so far has been for ourselves, for our own pleasure. And then we make this restriction over the desire. And then suddenly the light can't enter into Malchut. And so we place this screen over the desire. And this is the first restriction, symptom Aleph. And then we reach symptom Beit and symptom Gimel, and then symptom Dalet. Symptom Dalet is where we actually are able to receive the light into the vessel because it's no longer the light of selfishness, but the light of selflessness, the light of the Or Chokmah. And So it's important. This is another reason why it's important to study Kabbalah, because we learn these things and we learn to apply them. You know, meditation is just the beginning. You know, it's just something that we need to do in order to gain some momentum towards the goal, you know, and we have to do it every now and then, mostly every day at first, until we kind of gain a certain momentum and access a certain state where we no longer have to, do this kind of meditation, and suddenly we're like in a constant state of mindfulness all the time. So this happens in the level of Asya, on the level of this level of Nefesh. This is the constant state of the level of Asya. So this is where you first get that awareness of all of this going on, and you can maintain it without constant struggle. But then you reach the level of Yetzirah, where the constant state would be Ruach. So you have to go through this struggle again, and then through this struggle, we learn to access our higher self, which is the neshama, the level of neshama in the world of Beria. But so it's important to study all this, because the more you study, the more you, and at first it's going to seem like an alien language, everything, all of these concepts are very intricate and complex, and we study it, and then suddenly we're like, oh man, I just can't get this. Why can't I get this? And you're yearning so hard just to understand what it is that you're studying. But at the same time, what's happening is you're drawing the surrounding light to come and correct your soul, because this is what it takes. It takes all of that yearning. And that's why the Kabbalists made everything, wrote it in this language, so that we would build the desire through yearning to understand it. So like, we're like, man, why did they make these things so hard to understand? Why did they use the language of branches, and all this? It's because it's created in order to build the desire, in order to ascend further. They did everything in a very ordered way, very structured way, in order for each level to attain each level. And they knew it so well that they could create a whole map of our consciousness from beginning to end. And this is basically what Kabbalah is. It's a science and a measurement, a map of our consciousness, in order to bring all of the souls back together and unite with Hashem. So this is where the intention is, for this. I'm doing this mitzvah for the sake of the unification of the Shekinah with Hakadosh Baruch Hu, and this is what it's all about. We
In the
learn
Sephardic tradition, we call that the Lashem Yichud.
Yeah. But I mean, that's the end goal, And so like right now, technically we're on the level of Chaya, unity within unity. But so this unity first has to happen between us in order for us to truly become a, quote unquote, sanctuary for Hashem to dwell in our midst. And so this is the unity within unity. But it's a very lofty level, very, very hard to understand. I can say that I definitely haven't made it there yet, but I've tasted of it in order to, I can explain it and describe it a little bit, and I've had teachers who have made it there, and they've described it for me and taught me about it. But it's a very lofty level, and we have to pass through many corrections and barriers in order to get there. There's so many corrections we have to make along the way, because there's 125 degrees from beginning to end, and then there's degrees within those degrees, and we have to go step by step. So we have to be very patient, and we have to keep this in mind, that we're not studying for our own sake. So we have those days where we're like, I don't feel like studying, I just kind of want to hang out. So that's why it's important to set a schedule, so that you have a certain amount of studying that you do every single day without fail, because you're not studying for yourself. You're studying for others. You're studying to exit yourself in order to enter into this sensation of the connectivity with others. And once you do that, you learn to feel the other as yourself. You learn to feel their emotions, their thoughts, and their desires as your own, you know. And then you start to enter and truly understand that love your neighbor as yourself thing. But yeah, it's just, it takes a lot of patience and have keeping all this in mind, like what I just said about we may not understand it at first, but it's important to keep going because through this yearning, we're building that vessel to draw the light. We're drawing in that surrounding light that's always present, surrounds us. It's always wanting to correct us and help us and bestow goodness and love upon us. But we have to go through these certain corrections in order for this to happen. And we can only do this through constant yearning. Like the Baal Shem Tov, he taught that the verse in the Torah that says there should always be a constant fire on the altar, you know, the sacrificial altar. So this is referring to the burning desire within us to ascend